Well, first of all, a calm, meditative morning is key. Getting up and just not filling your brain with a bunch of bullshit and noise. I'm telling you, man, you grab that iPhone first thing and start Instagramming. And I've done that. I'm not saying I haven't done that before. But yeah, that's it's going to hold you back. Because that dream state is true. Like creative work in the morning, like the writer David Sedaris, he says, no matter where he is, he just gets up and does 30 minutes.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. This episode is sponsored by OWC, Other World Computing, which you can find at OWC.com, your trusted source for memory and speed upgrades, DIY installs, and used Macs for your studio. Let OWC focus on keeping your studio Mac in killer condition so that you can focus on making great music. Why ditch your existing Mac when you can take your studio far into the future with OWC? Learn more at OWC.com and learn how you can supercharge your studio Mac. The speed to create, the capacity to dream. Find out how awesome your Mac can be at OWC. This show is sponsored by Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can go to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level. And you can start right now with my free introduction to mixing course, Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. And the best part is that these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you are in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything you can think of. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, or look for the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals and songwriters today, so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Tim Easton, an artist, musician, songwriter, and troubadour, originally from Akron, Ohio, before starting his musical journey traveling across Europe, busking the streets of London, Paris, Spain, Italy, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, and Ireland for 7 years. Tim has since had a long career of songwriting, collaborating, and record making that includes his band the Haynes Boys in the 90s, followed by 2 decades of solo records, recording and touring with the likes of members of Wilco, the Jayhawks, Lucinda Williams, Tift Merritt, Mike Campbell, Jim Keltner, Kenny Vaughan, John Hiatt, and many more. He has been signed to EMI Publishing, New West Records, and 30 Tigers, and even started his own record label, Campfire Propaganda. He continues to make records and make it happen through crowdfunding when appropriate. Tim has even authored a book about his musical journey that gives a shout out to the Toy Box Studio. Thanks, Tim.
You are welcome.
I'm excited to talk with Tim today about songwriting, producing records in the studio, and surviving the long journey of music. Please welcome Tim Easton to Recording Studio Rockstars. Tim, my man, are you ready to rock?
8 days a week, brother.
Awesome, dude. Great to have you here. I guess, the first thing we did together was it in the 90s? I think it was.
Late
that was
90s,
the Haynes Boys.
The late 90s, I had a band from Columbus, Ohio, kind of a roots rock band called the Haynes Boys. And we played South by Southwest, and Wilco was playing that same night, their very first show at South by Southwest. So I wanted to go see that show. Well, we were playing at the same time, and man, it was a really cool club. But one of the Judds assistants were there, like the assistant to the Judds, the country band, the mother and daughter.
Yeah.
And she loved it. And she asked, I gave her a cassette, and she gave the cassette to Brad Jones. And that's how the Haynes Boys came to Nashville.
Oh, that's great. So she gave the cassette to Wilco.
No.
She gave, say it again. So how'd that cassette get from
she gave the cassette to Brad Jones.
Oh, Brad was there.
No. She was just an assistant for the Judds who said, I've got a friend in Nashville that owns a studio. I'll bring it to him. So in the late 90s, she brought this cassette to
great.
Brad Jones. He leaves a long message on my machine. It was the first producer Nashville cat that showed any interest. And he brought us down, and we got worked this little deal out with a company from Slab. company from New York called Slab. And we went down to Nashville and made a record and drank a lot of bourbon.
That's cool, man. That was a lot of fun. So Rockstar, as a reminder, Brad Jones has been on the podcast. He was a mentor of mine at one of the first studios I was at, which was Alex the Great recording, still going strong in Berry Hill.
Yeah. So you were an assistant on that album.
I was an assistant on that album. It was one of my first assisting gigs. And
do you have credit? I wonder if you have credit on the album.
I don't know. We're making the credit right here, right now.
Yes, it got re-released on vinyl, and because it came out right at the peak, like CDs are it. So a little bit of a bummer there. And so it got re-released on vinyl, a real limited run. But, it just, I loved that band. It was really fun, but it turned out that it was some side projects for some other guys. So I basically kind of had to jet off and do my own thing.
Right. You just hadn't evolved your own thing in order for it to also be a side project for you yet.
Yeah. Well, being in a band is tough, man. It's a crazy marriage, between several people. Men and women in a van together. It's a lot of personalities you got to coordinate to get on one page and say, hey, we're going to do this. Because otherwise it's just half-assed. You're playing in Des Moines to 12 people and getting $80 and you're not.
Which can also be fun, but it might not be fun for repeated nights in a row.
Yeah, no, it's fun when you're 22 or something, but then, it just, it's focus and it's tough to be in a band. So all you out there that are in a band going for it, it's like really sit down and have a little talk about what all of your goals really truly are. Because there's always, one cat who's like, actually, I'm going to go back to law school or whatever it is.
Right.
There's something going on that like, are you really going for it? Or are you just going to go, are you window shopping?
That's what happened in our band or in my band with guys in St. Louis. I was the guy who was like, yeah, I'm going to go backpack around Europe for a little bit. And then I came back and I wanted to rejoin the band. And meanwhile, during that year, they had, kind of had a big go of it and played big shows in Chicago. And they were sort of already ready to wind down by the time I was like, yeah, I want to do this.
Yeah. They're up there rocking the lounge acts. It's not easy to do. And I was guilty of being half-assed about things myself. I'm not pointing fingers at them, but we're all friends today. And, that band, that's kind of how I learned to get in the studio right there. It was with Brad Jones. And I learned some things from him right off the bat that I still kind of apply today. And a big one of them is saying yes to some suggestions that people bring up.
Oh, that's good. We were just talking about that recently too.
Yes. It's good to have a vision and an idea, but you can't be so rigid that you're like, there's one that always jumps out with me. And that's Brad suggested is like, why don't you open the song with the bridge? I'm like, what? You're nuts.
You're crazy, dude.
Yeah. And then I did, and I love it. I took a suggestion and tried it. You're in the studio, you're in this experimental place. Do you love the Beatles? Let's try some stuff, basically I thought that it was time to accept that your vision isn't a 100%, with all the confidence that you can really nail the hits here. So
yeah, you might even suggest that your vision is a lot smaller than you thought it was.
Basically,
right?
Yeah, just accept that it's a collaboration. The studio is collaboration. When you're on your own, recording on your 4-track, yeah, do your thing. Follow your crazy muse down the trail. Turn the tape over, record back, whatever. Have fun with it. But when you're in the studio, you are collaborating. Other people are showing up to work with you. Show up prepared, know your song, but also know that you could stretch it out a little bit, move a few chords around. And I definitely picked that up from Brad. Especially if you're going to work with a producer, someone that calls themselves a producer, it's like, let's see what their vision is,
Mm-hmm. So I guess those are some things I wanted to ask you about working with producers too, is, what are some things that as an artist you might expect from a producer? I know what it's like to be on the end of the engineer or the producer's end and try and work with an artist and work on songs. But I'm always curious, like from an artist perspective, what do you when you think about, I'm going to go work with this producer, what's that like? And what are the things that go through your mind and that you hope for and that you're surprised by?
I would say that all the best ones set a vibe that is undeniable. There's no way around it. You look at all the ones through time. We don't know a lot about the kind of vibe that George Martin would set but we know that he was a comedian and he made those guys laugh and set them at ease, So
I didn't know he was a comedian.
Well,
I knew he did.
I'm
he
starting
did
to
some
pick up
comedy records.
I'm starting to pick up on a little more that his studio sense of humor, his was there,
like
and
the
he
dry British thing.
Yeah, and he was also he was just really good at what he did. So what I'm expecting is the vibe of relaxation set and a studio that doesn't feel like there's a clock on the wall and that we're in here having fun making art together. That's the major part about it, because these guys don't want to work with people that they're not into. They're doing it. You're not really doing it for the paycheck so much. You're doing it because you love it. Now, when you start doing it for the paycheck, which everybody has, then you're like, I'm not having fun here. This is not enjoyable for me. Unless it's like the paychecks with this great artist that you love so much, but you know what I mean? Like basically, there comes a time when you need to pay the bills, and then you find you're not really enjoying yourself on the job because someone's so rigid and difficult to work with. This is speaking from the producer's point of view. I want a producer to have innovative ideas, and I want them to know about and be excited about music the same way I am.
How often is a producer that you're working with somebody who's also an engineer and hands-on with the recording versus a producer that is sitting back in the back of the room?
It turns out that pretty much all of my producers are also engineers. I mean, for starters, Brad Jones, who's made most of my records, and Robin Eaton. Robin, in that case of that partnership, Robin was more the guy with the ideas and is more the guy with the ideas, I should say. And now their studios are next door to each other here in Nashville, and they're incredible spaces, both of them. I was just in one of them last night, Club Roar. So it turns out I worked with Joe Ciccarelli too, and he was an engineer for years.
Yeah.
And then produced me with some of the members of Wilco in Chicago a long time ago. And so a lot of these guys were engineers too. And I'd say if I was going to produce somebody, I'd be more of the let's sit back, let's get an engineer that's really good at making sure everything the levels are there, because I like my recordings that I do, and I've just been doing them all this week. I went and traveled around the country and recorded in like historical locations, and my levels are a little low.
Well, you know what? Low levels are a little safer these days, because it's so easy to gain things up once you're inside the computer too, if you're recording that way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pro Tools.
All right, well, let's jump straight to that. Tell us, well, actually, let me ask you one more question before we leave it behind in the dust.
Yeah, man.
I want to hear a little bit of the story about you spending 7 years busking on the streets and doing all that. Because I remember when we were working together, Brad told me that he was like, Tim, he was like out busking on the streets of Europe and backpacking all over. And I was like, that sounds really cool. But I never heard that story from you.
Well, I wanted to write songs. I knew that I wanted to write songs, and I needed some experience. I was into the Woody Guthrie thing, and I was into the Beatles and the Stones, and then some older songwriters, American songwriters. And I just figured I needed to get some life experience. I needed to cross the Mississippi River. But before I crossed the Mississippi River, I went over to Europe for a while. I probably was chasing down that British thing at first. And then I ended up busking because I was like, I can make money doing this. Like I can sing a song and maybe an American. Then I started singing American folk songs, like some Sonny Terry, some Brownie McGee, some Townes Van Zandt, and just singing these songs and kind of owning them myself. And, but just like the real world, once you would do a cover that was kind of big, you'd make more money. Like it was so classic. Like I'll never forget in Italy.
It's just like YouTube today,
basically.
Right?
Yeah. It just like, yeah. I mean, I'd be out there in Italy or Prague, and I had a partner, my best friend, Joe Cirillo. He owns a restaurant in New York City called Dirty Bird to Go. And he was a washboard player. So he and I were like in a skiffle band. We went over to Europe. We went through Italy, where his family was from. And then we went to Prague and stuff like that. And then one day we decided, let's learn Satisfaction. Let's just play Satisfaction, see what happens. Sure enough, the Italian kids are just going crazy for it,
yeah.
And so I guess we owe the Stones a little
It's got a
royalty
pretty
on
hard
that.
bass line, doesn't it? Hard guitar riff there.
It's just, that's what I was doing, man. I was laying down hard on the E chord and just laying down on the blues and getting a backbeat going. And that was my main thing. And that's how I got, people dancing and stuff on the streets. So we started there. We started our performance thing competing with like taxi cabs and construction workers and city people and finding those places that were cool for pedestrians. That those are European towns have these pedestrian areas, but they were built before cars, man. So it's like they got these great acoustic spaces. And
really.
Yeah, we went through Yugoslavia before the Civil War.
What was the time frame that you were there? Was this like early 90s or something? You talked about Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, man.
Close
late
to 91,
80s,
right?
late 80s, and then early 90s. Yeah, all off and on. And then the Haynes Boys kind of formed near the end of that. And I
feel like we should point this out too, that the like 91 was when the wall came down.
Yes.
The Berlin Wall.
That's a big part of it.
And that was, and Prague opened up. All of a sudden you could go into Czechoslovakia and Prague. And I was there at the same time. So I wonder, we might have even crossed paths,
Yeah, I was on that bridge, the Charles Bridge, making loot. And like the guy that, that was down the way, I've just reconnected with him on Facebook. He was singing Beatles tunes and stuff and just raking in the crowds and the money. And we were, doing a different thing. So life played out. The music business played out on the steps of, or on the bridge there, just as when I was a street musician in Paris, Beck Hansen was also there, and he stayed at my flat for about a week.
Oh,
so
cool.
he and I hit the streets together, and he wrote an article about it in the photographer, the famous woman photographer, Rolling Stone photographer,
Annie Leibovitz.
Annie Leibovitz has a book called American Music, and Beck has an article in there where he mentions busking with me on the streets.
That's cool, man.
Of Paris. Yeah, it's one of those things. But he pointed it out. It's so true. Like there was guys up there, these Middle Eastern guys would sing Beatles songs, or Eagles songs or something,
because they knew it was up. They knew where the money was. Man.
Yeah, they just that's what they were into, and it's cool to get over to Europe and see how much our musical culture. And, the Beatles are not from here, but our musical culture certainly informed them.
Yeah,
100%.
Totally.
So, these guys on the steps of Montmartre, they would rake it in, and rake in the girls and just all the people, so we had to figure out what to do we were just the folk weirdos,
There was another fun detail about traveling through Paris that I remember. There was a bookstore that was famous. I don't know if it's still there, called Left Bank Books.
You mean Shakespeare and Company?
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I lived there.
Why am I calling it Left Bank Books?
Because it was on the left bank.
Okay,
left bank
right.
is an area. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, and that was a really cool place. And this was a time long before email and long before cell phones. So if you're traveling and you needed to get a message to somebody, they had a big blackboard and you'd write your message on the blackboard.
Yeah.
And then they'd just stop by later and they'd see it up there.
Yeah. And poste restante. Remember what that is? Like sending mail to the main post office in any town with your name and poste restante. You could get mail that way. Yeah. That bookstore was run by George Whitman when we were there. He was a descendant of Walt Whitman, and I lived there for a week and was part of that scene a lot. And that place went through a fire. And then later I did a benefit for them, and that's where I ended up meeting Beck through a guy that was that I met at Shakespeare and Company.
That's cool. That was a lot of fun traveling around doing all that stuff. And then there was another detail in your bio where I think you did a record, Paco. What's the full title there?
Paco and the Melodic Polaroids.
Yes, Paco and the Melodic Polaroids. And you said that a deadhead in Paris named your guitar Paco.
Yep.
And was this around 91 as well?
Yeah. Were you at that Dead show?
I went to both those Dead shows.
Oh my God. So I was there.
It's a small world.
Wow.
We were probably in the same place.
I didn't go to the show for whatever reason. I was in the parking lot hanging out, and I slept as many hippies as I could on the floor, my place. And, so the guitar was named Paco, and it's this Gibson J45 that I've had and I used through the Haynes Boys album, and I used all through this week recording my field recording project, and it's the album that I use. It's the guitar I use for Paco and the Melodic Polaroids. The whole album was recorded direct to lacquer in Bristol, Virginia, 1 year ago. So that album's only a year old. And it's the first album that I own 100% of. And that's my big advice too to songwriters and musicians in general.
The rock stars.
You
can call them the rock stars.
Yeah, the rock stars out there, just just own it, just own it. And I committed that stuff to, direct to lacquer, and it just like, there's no fixing it in the mix there, man. It was just done. And it was just such a relief to do it that way. Like this week I'm back in the world of overdubs and stuff. And I have to say, the old, Bob Dylan, standing on your shoulder going, what are you doing, man? Just lay it down. Get it done. Don't be fussing around with it. I mean, of course he did some overdubs too. And so did Tom Petty and all my heroes, but it is so fun. And that is how the Haynes Boys kind of entered the studio. Like, we're just going to do it. And then we found out, well, no, not really, because there's a lot of drums in this mic. So you're going to re-sing it or whatever.
Right. Well, so a couple of takeaways. You talk about busking and, learning satisfaction and thumping the beat and figuring out how to compete with all these other things. I imagine that all that experience of understanding how music resonates with the people who are listening to it right in front of you must have informed, your understanding of songwriting and understanding of what makes it work, as opposed to, the opposite, which you talked about, if it's just you and your 4-track and you're just following your muse and your vision. How do those two things correlate? How do they butt heads with each other? Well,
I think I learned a lot about performing and wrangling in an audience from busking. And then the main thing we're getting at here is that recording and performing are two different art forms. And so it takes a while, no matter how much of a stage cat you are, to figure out what is going on with the recording studio. It's just a whole different thing. So I had some hard lessons to learn, and I'm still learning them today. I would call myself the slowest learning folk soldier in town. It's just one of those things. Like, sometimes you let your nerves or your insecurities get to you and you don't deliver. Now, I feel like I'm always delivering lyrically better, and I just refuse to acknowledge some of my weaknesses. And I just keep plowing forward, like kind of winging it sometimes and stumbling and and it's not pretty sometimes to listen to the past and me being like drunk in the studio and just insecure and boisterous or whatever.
Right.
And it's not a pretty thing. And that's the hard lesson I had to learn. And today I'm trying to have fun and be optimistic and like bring a little bit of joy, even if my lyric is pointing at a dark thing. I try to round it out with some other songs that have a little bit more optimism to them, just because I just feel like that's where I am right now. I'm a very young, middle-aged man.
I'm trying to be that too, man.
I'm sorry, pre-middle-aged.
That's great. That's great. What about just, the sense of, the sense of rhythm and the importance of like, the way that the rhythm of the track and the drive of it sort of will. Do you feel like
I didn't really answer your question?
No, it's all right. But do you feel like you have a sort of a gut sense from all that playing of this is going to pull people in, or this isn't, or it doesn't matter so much because maybe, like you said, they're just two separate things?
Oh no, I know that rhythm and that stuff you're kind of born with. You can't really be taught that stuff. You just like stomping your foot and keeping with it.
Really, what about Steve Martin and The Jerk,
Yeah, that's a classic scene in my life. I think I smashed my head against the back of the chair laughing from that scene. My sister took me to that movie. I mean, and Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee are in that movie. There's certain things that here's what I learned. My first teacher said, "Hey, tap your foot when you're playing guitar. Just keep that thing going. Don't think about it. Just let's get a body rhythm going here with the pulse." And that was, there you go. There's your lesson. It's like my guitar lesson for everybody about Travis picking. They're like, how do you Travis pick like that? Just so.
What is Travis picking?
Travis picking is named after Merle Travis. Doc Watson named his son Merle after Merle Travis. So if you listen to 9 Pound Hammer, you listen to some of those Chet Atkins and Merle Travis albums, you'll hear this boom, ting, to. It's a rhythm that bouncing your thumb back and forth. And the bass strings of the guitar, and then playing melodies in between. Now, they say that Donovan is the one who taught the Beatles how to Travis pick while they were in India. And that's where Blackbird and Julia and the songs on the White Album, like Blackbird is a Travis picking song. That's a Travis picking style. It's just done with a British folk vibe to it. So the great Travis picking is, Doc Watson and, of course, Chet Atkins and cats like that. And so it's a style of picking that came from Merle Travis, and he kind of honed it in. You can do your own thing with it, but it's definitely like all over Nashville records from 50s and whatnot. And well, it's just something to learn, and it's hard to learn unless you commit to sitting on the couch, bouncing your thumb back and forth mindlessly.
And then you learn how to forget about it, and it just begins to happen.
Yes, just like the left hand on a piano player, like playing stride piano or ragtime piano. Like I can't quite do that and play the melody with my right hand, but on a guitar I can.
Yeah. So Rockstars, I've included videos of Tim's. You have a lot of videos on YouTube where you were doing great covers.
Yeah, recently I did a bunch of covers just because I was thinking about some of the songwriters that inspired me, and also because I wanted to let my daughter know. I mean, everything I do now is pretty much like I'm leaving a time capsule for her. I know it's crazy, but that's what it is, because I have all this crazy, wild, drug and alcohol fueled wild songs of my youth, and now it's more about being a little more responsible, even though she named a song that I'm working on now called Scratch the Sky from the Batman building downtown.
That's great.
Yeah. She said, it looks like that building is scratching the sky. And I used that title to write this psychedelic song about the first time I took LSD and went to see the Kinks in high school with all my high school buddies. We went to the Come Dancing tour in Cleveland, Ohio at the Coliseum.
Were they playing Lola still?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. They would start it. Da, 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 and then he'd stop and Ray Davies would be like, no, we're not going to play that one tonight. And I, being on acid, started to cry.
Ray Davies was always a shit stirrer, wasn't he?
It really upset me. I was like, why aren't you going to play it? And that's what the song is kind of about.
Oh, that's a trip, man. That's great. I've never seen the Kinks play. But I did start to read the Ray Davies book. I got to finish that one too.
I've not read that one. I love him so much. And I love how all musicians come around to saying, oh yeah, no, it's not the Beatles or the Stones, it's the Kinks, and it's just, okay, that's cute and everything. They were unruly and wild, and they make you think you could be, like them in the studio, I've heard from old cats that like that record store geeks and whatnot of the time used to accuse the Kinks of not being able to play really well, like the Stones, they're not very good, but they have cool songs. But it's like, yeah, they were
it's
amazing.
Sort of funny because I feel like I've even experienced that in my own life. I remember having a sense somewhere along the way that like I was at this level. There was some other musician and band that I considered much better than me, and then there might be some other band that I considered, he not very proficient, but they have cool songs. It's almost like that always exists.
Yeah, and that's the way it is with me too. I feel there's sometimes I just don't feel like a great musician, when I'm around jazz cats or when I went to the opera this a month ago in Italy. I go back to Europe now, and I walk by those streets and I see those spots, and I still want to go play music for people and busk, because it's like back in the day, it was just like, I didn't have much to sweat, right? I just needed some beer money and food money and enough to pay the hostel.
Enough for a baguette and some brie and some red wine.
Life was
clear bottles of red wine that,
you're lucky. Table wine. You're lucky I haven't been talking about that since you first asked about it till now, because my classic answer is like, don't get me started, because that is a romantic, amazing period. So I'd say that I don't even know what your question was now, but I mean,
the question is always like, what's the deal with music? That's always the question. But, I'm going to share this too, since we're talking about this busking thing. My brother and I did that too. When I was about 28, we went back over to Paris and spent a couple of weeks in Paris. And I took a banjo and he took his accordion, and we just learned a bunch of covers. We learned like Gus Viseur songs and old Texas Czech songs and stuff like that. And we would go to La Parc de la Villette, which is that super modern, funky, weird, where you're like, dude, what is this little, trippy place down under the ground here? These weird art installations and stuff. And we just go practice songs, and then exactly that, go get a baguette, some cheese, and
yeah,
it was so much fun until we got busted by the police in the Paris,
I've been chased around by the police in many different countries, and I used to use the name it was the late 80s and early 90s. I used the name Peter Buck as my name because we were like, and every now and then we would do like a Ween song or an REM song, and so there was a lot of interesting covers mixed in with some of the classic. Deep River Blues by Doc Watson, just something we could lean into that had a backbeat. And a lot of times I was by myself, but oftentimes I would hook up with other musicians that were out there that I could bond with, like an upright bass player. Like an upright bass on the street is money. Like
really, because it just looks so cool.
You can see
and it sounds great.
You can hear it, and it's just like boom.
Really
you're
funny. That's
next
great.
thing you know, you're playing an Elvis tune and you're bringing it in.
You made a lot of upright bass players happy on this podcast right now, I think.
Well, they know they also have the burden of having to carry an upright bass around when they travel. So there's nothing easy there.
It's like the drummer, if you're going to get to bang on those things and look cool doing it, you also have to carry that thing around and set it up and tear it down.
Yeah. It's
and somehow the singer always just seems to disappear as soon as the set's over and is not around to help tear down the drum set.
Not all of them. There's some that help, and there are some that are not stuck in that world, but some of the greats, well, what can we say? People, I can't point fingers at any uppity, aloof musicians because I've been.
Wow, we've all been that, right?
I've just been lost in a self-centered bullshit world. I've just been there, and my apologies to any engineers that I've worked with. Now, like last night, and working with Jesse Newport, and it's just a different world now. It's just about respect. It's like we're all showing up to work, and that's and communication and just saying what you want and what you want to do and how you're going to work this out is really important for musicians entering studios right now. It's like show up, know your song, and realize that you're part of a team here, and you got to get some work done and kick some ass, or else it's just going to be jive. Yeah.
So I was going to ask you that. What's that balance between not looking at the clock in the studio, but also having like a time frame and a framework around your working day and that sort of thing?
Wow. I'm not sure I'm able to really fully describe that. It's, do you have a song ready to go? I mean, do you know your song well? Then get ready to enter the studio. You're going to have to ask that question.
All right. Let me ask it this way, because it's sparking a new question. You're the songwriter, you're an artist, you've hired a band to come in and play with you in the studio.
Gotcha.
So you've got these musicians.
Done that.
What's a good way to be, to get the most out of that moment with the band and be ready and be prepared or whatever? What makes it great for the band, and what makes you, really productive in the studio?
Well, if it's not like a 3-chord country or rhythm and blues tune, have the song tracked, demoed, and sent to them before they get to the studio. So they can make a chart. The cool thing about Nashville, let's face it, we got all these great engineers, great people that know how to fix tape machines and work and then you got these musicians, they show up and they kick ass. There's so many here. John Radford, the drummer, I've worked with him a couple of times, and Michael Riney, the bass player, those guys, it's the way the new A-list young dudes that kick ass in this town. And just, in general, there's dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds and hundreds of this town. It's like, but give them your song and give them a form, let them chart it out the way they want to chart it out. And then be ready to change something or stretch it out, stretch some bars out or something like that. So it's about being prepared with everything in life, right? You just more relaxed in the studio if you know your song. Now, are you all about charting the song and handing them a chart? Or are you all about having a recording of it, let them do the chart? Yeah, man, my charts are whack. I don't know how to do that very well. I like to learn, and it's great when I get a good chart and I see someone build a good chart of my song. I always take it and try to photocopy it. Or I try to. I don't always do it, but it's great to have that.
You always remember that you should have afterwards.
You should, because you need those. Because then later, maybe of course, you're standing on stage at a certain venue, and you have that chart for somebody. And Nashville is just so great for musicianship and studio preparedness, man. It just blows other places away. Like I've just been in some situations growing up in some studios and then in Ohio or whatever, and it's just like, oh, why does it sound like we're recording through a pillow here? What's going on? Like it just, I can't really.
Because you're going for that 70s sound. That's why.
Just velvety, soft pillow.
So let me ask you this. Another question for you as a songwriter, as an artist. You're about to hit the studio. You're going to record. I'm about to do it. I'm planning to hit the studio right about the time this comes out, actually.
Oh, good.
And start tracking some songs because I'm going to kick my own ass and make it happen.
Good. Do it. What are you waiting for? Yeah.
Exactly. But you are faced with the question of which musicians do you invite to do this record with you? Talk about some of the things you've learned about picking the right musicians to work with, some of the challenges, some of the things that maybe you thought were going to be a big problem and turned out you were totally off base, that kind of stuff.
Man, in Nashville, it's like almost like if you run into the same cat at Kroger enough times, you're like, maybe we should work together. Like some of the greatest pedal steels players in the world are, strolling the aisles of Kroger.
I'm going to be interviewing one right here, Smith Curry, after your interview.
It's incredible. We have a town full of amazing cats. So a lot of them have a reputation, or a lot of them you might see playing. Like I moved to town. I saw John playing. I didn't know anything about what his vibe was. I just saw him play a set. Robbie Crowell.
This is John Radford.
John Radford.
Yeah, same thing with me. I was like, this is my new favorite drummer.
I just, it's just like vibes. And then you find out they get in the studio and they are ready to go. They're machines of quality. And Robbie Crowell's another one. And I used all these guys and Patrick Dampier to record a record over at Club Roar. And it's like people have said on there, like, it's weird that you have the click track kind of vibe in that song. I'm like, no. There's no click track there. That's John Radford holding down the fort. Like there's not a click track on that album. And so it just like, and not that you just want a breathing thing. So how to differentiate, how do you find these musicians?
Do you feel like you already knew what it was like to play with them before you invited them to come do the record?
You kind of share a vibe with someone. You might discuss some Creedence Clearwater part or something. You just kind of get into music with someone and then you enjoy their company and you want to learn from them. In the beginning with Brad Jones, he was getting Ross Rice and all kinds of different guys that that are amazing. Jim Hoke, just different cats that he would bring in that were his guys. And all you producers, you have your guys that you go to for whether it's musicianship or mastering. So each one of these producers out here, and you walk around the neighborhood we're in right now, or on the other side of Gallatin Pike, like there's some, it's like the cool ground zero for the amount of studios that are in people's houses where they're making records that are up there, that are charting and whatever, and getting awards and stuff. And they all have their guys. So how do you pick that one? It's just about a vibe and talking about music and whether you love what you love together, what you find in common.
How often have you selected a musician to hit the studio with where you hadn't played with them yet, but you had heard some stuff they did and just thought like, I just know it's going to work?
Recently in the last 5 years here, I've done that a couple of times. I do a thing every year where I raise money for a charity in Nashville called SAFPAW. It's the Southern Alliance for People and Animal Welfare. And every year I kind of get a different group of musicians together to record a Dylan outtake or like a rare Dylan song. And this year my first Music Row recording experience, and man, did it go well. It was like in 2 hours that we were done. Take 2, take 3 and then like a little bit minimal overdub, some vocals, and it sounded great, and it was just beautiful. And it was filmed by Stacey Huckabee.
She's great.
She is so good, and she brings the joy to this project. And so I'm going to be doing it every year. I'm going to be expanding every year. I got to tell you right now, I just say it live on every year I get a studio and musicians and Stacey to donate 3 hours and let's just bang this puppy out, you know? And Dylan, like live, like a Dylan.
Smart way to do it, too.
Yeah, just let's get 3-hour session. Let's do this. Of course, it takes Stacy a little bit longer to edit the film, because more than 3 hours, because that's a lot of work. It's a lot more work than you think. And she's got a couple different cameras going, but her work is so good. And she's just, so if you go on and punch in like Easton, Dylan cover, Southpaw, benefit, charity, you'll see the last 4 years. We've done it 4 years in a row now.
Cool. And, I'll see if we can put that in the YouTube playlist.
Yeah. The McCrary sisters are on one. I mean, my gosh.
I saw that one. That was great.
Yeah. That was done right down the street in this neighborhood. So we would love to come and work with you on one of these, 1 year. And we're just going to keep it going, because it's like, what can you do in your neighborhood? Like my drive over here today, there was a guy on the corner of Gallatin and Briley Parkway. And it just breaks your heart, to your own neighborhood. It's like what you can do right now. It's just like try to get your own neighborhood like in order.
Yeah.
A little bit, I mean, there's homeless camps all around here, and it's like, I know there's mental illness and drug addiction and whatnot. That's part of this, and hard times and hard luck. But it's like, what can you do? Just work on your own neighborhood. It's hard to be, we are the world, and with everything. But, I just have to say that inspiration comes from those same cats, like musicians getting together, whether it's George Harrison with Bangladesh and stuff like that stuff inspired me. And today, now that I have more time and I'm less self-centered about everything. Okay. No, I'm still self-centered. Never mind. I should keep saying that like it's like I'm learning something, but man, I'm trying to learn something.
Yeah. So now it's cool to hear you talk about doing this annual benefit as something that has become kind of a foundation of your yearly routine.
Yeah.
But at some point you had to invent this idea and do it the first time. Do you have any things to share about your process of coming up with a new idea, doing it again, and then what that's like, where you're at a point where you're like, oh yeah, now I just do it. Now I can call these people. We'll knock it out in 3 hours. It's going to happen.
I love how you ask a question and I completely go off into another thing. And that is just going to be my thing here, because we started with just picking musicians and whether it worked out. And I also like that a lot of your questioning goes towards like, well, what did you learn from like a mistake, or what, when did you figure this out? And I see what you're getting at with a lot of it. And what did you just ask me?
No, just about putting together a show like that. So when I hear you talk about doing this fundraiser, I think about, every year I'm going to go down and do a Bonnaroo studio as long as they keep inviting me to do it. But, and it's one of those things that like,
is
over
it
time,
automatic?
Yeah. Sometimes you look at what somebody else is doing, like, how in the world did they ever get to that? Maybe talk about what you remember about the beginning of that process and like coming up with an idea, launching it, making it happen, and then now you feel very comfortable with like pursuing an idea like that.
Yeah, I know what it is. It's not about trying. It's about doing. Just do it. I mean, really, that cliche is pretty funny, but it really is true. It's like, just get to it. Don't sit around the coffee shop and talk about it. Get on it. My sister is a successful visual artist because she's been painting for years and years and years, hours and hours and hours. So that's my thing. It's like, just get on it, and you're going to make some mistakes. My God knows how, but you got to commit to some ideas and go for it. There are so many people out there fearful of what other people are going to say or judge about their creativity and their art. And that just stomps out so much stuff. So, did I answer your question? Who knows?
Yeah.
I'd say get on it, just get on it. That's, the putting this together in this project, it became a thing. So now I got other people that like check in with me, like the engineer Gabe Masterson is a great Nashville engineer, and he is part of this too. Him and Stacy and I get on this thing, and this last one, he checked in with me. He's like, hey, what are we doing for this year's Southpaw benefit? And it's like, thank you, team members, for helping. I can't do it alone, so I appreciate everybody out there pushing forward. And then there's the music freaks and music lovers out there in the world that just drop a couple of bucks on a song and buy the MP3. And thank you, Bob Dylan, by the way, for letting us have the publishing for it, or not That's like great. Worrying about that.
You talked about, you can't be afraid of putting yourself out there and what people are going to think. obviously you must have made music videos, done live shows, and experienced somebody giving you feedback that they didn't like what you did. What are some of the things that you do? How do you deal with criticism? How do you ever have somebody tell you that they think what you do sucks? And what do you do about that?
In one ear, out the other. People are too polite, maybe. You get a vibe. You know that you're just not cool in certain schools. Whatever. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Do you want to make art and create, or do you want to work in a cubicle? I don't know what to tell you there.
A nice, safe cubicle.
Yeah. I think I'm really lucky to be born with just enough aloofness or optimism / not very bright, just not being very bright. Yeah. And just being like, and trying to, it's certain things you can't let that stuff get you down. Like, I know I'm not the best at what I do. Like, my daughter thinks I'm the best, and it's one of those things where you're like, "Ooh, actually, Jimmy Webb, he's the best.
He's better on it.
He's better at this." Man, I tell you, this is so funny because I'm reading that Jeff Tweedy book right now, and there's just enough stings and barbs in that book to like get me like, out, that hurts a bit, but I love it, and I do feel a lot of kinship with him and similarities and stuff. And a long time ago, and I have mad respect for him and the guys in the band, and it's amazing, and their work ethic and stuff like that. And
these rock stars, this is the members of Wilco.
Again. Yeah. And Pat lives around here, and John's is a great, and those guys have their own side projects and stuff. Anyways, what I was getting at was that a long time ago, Peter Blackstock, the journalist who runs No Depression magazine, he was pointing out some of the similarities in some of the earlier, like the Haynes Boys album and that Wilco AM album. And I said, yeah, we're there's a similar vibe going on there. And he goes, yeah, he's just better at it, like that. And I didn't take that as an insult. I was like, I agree. He just loves, I thought to myself, like, that guy loves rock and roll more than I do. He understands it more. He gets into it more, and he lives it and breathes it more than I do. I'm off doing I'm off in a world of poetry and lyrics, maybe more like leaning into that a little bit. That's trying to get a cohesive thing going with that. And also just not being afraid to write something silly or something that's like based on an earlier form and could be an older folk song, so I go down a different path, and I'm not as committed to success, unfortunately, for me and my family as some people. Like, just some people are just better at it, so what I try to do is like, well, what are my today's, what can I do to hang in there and keep doing this? And the answer is just don't look back. Just keep trucking and keep going, and try your best now to do the best you can. I didn't do that before, man. Those are the mistakes I made. I got drunk the night before the session. I showed up hungover. I was hungover the majority of that Haynes Boys album. I mean, no doubt about it. And that's just
I might have been too.
Yeah. I mean, that's just insecurity and that stuff. But I wasn't insecure enough to not do it, though, because there's a lot of people out there that are just never going to do it. And I know some genius musicians, session guys that are great songwriters too, that are just kind of sitting on this stuff forever. And I don't know. It's like, just do it. Who cares?
Yeah.
Who gives a shit, man? Like, put it out there. There's so much stuff out there that no one cares. Like, do you have time to listen to all the music that's being made? No, you don't. You do not.
You only have the time to make your music.
Yeah, well, you got to listen. I listen to classical now. I've moved into that phase where it's like I put on the classical, jazz, or old dead black guys that still move me. Like, on the way here, because I'm not going to listen to NPR and get bummed out about Trump, every day. I can't do it anymore. I've got to retain optimism in this world. Of course, I check in with the news because I'm human, and I love Woody Guthrie, and I kind of want to know what's going on. But today is Lightning Hopkins. I just get up and I get going, and I'm listening to the Lightning, And there's a reason why I play like that sometimes live. It's because I listen to those albums so much that those moves are just inherent.
Yeah,
to not give a
groovy.
damn about hitting a weird note on the guitar. Just are you singing the song, or are you just
emoting too, putting the emotion? And that's one of the challenges I think about doing blues and songs that may be simple in chord progression and I don't want to say simple in lyric, but like the words going together isn't the challenge in the way that like a high speed rap song would be or something. Is that, it's all you've got left is can you put the emotion in it? Can you stay in that moment and feel it and deliver it that way too?
Yeah, it's that red light fever early on, pretty tough.
Indeed.
It gets a lot of people. So, but you've got to just remember that you're not working for the record company. You're not working for anybody but yourself when you're making art, and try to get back to that and stay with that, because that is going to help you along the way. And, there was times when I wasn't as focused as I should have been. And I don't want to waste anybody's time out there, and neither should you. Listen to this, get in there and like, make it happen, man. They have lives too. And I didn't learn that right away. I learned that from you guys, from being around you guys enough. So, that don't waste people's time in the studio is one thing. Don't show up half-assed and just, thinking, the label will do it or they'll fix it in the mix or whatever. It's like, kick some ass. And then also for you songwriters out there, read the books, read the classics, read the great poetry of the world, and read the great novels and literature of your language. And that includes friggin' Bill Shakespeare, just get the book of sonnets of Bill Shakespeare and just read them out loud. Read one out loud, even if it doesn't make any sense. Just check out the language and that iambic pentameter and just see how those sounds go together. And you're going to learn something from that.
That's great. A great tip. I love that. I should do that myself.
I need to
make more time for
I just leave random books around and I pick them up and I just read out loud.
Yeah.
And, read your own writing out loud, like say it out loud. I mean, that's just little things I can do. I teach the songwriting thing up in Alaska every year. So if anybody's listening and interested, and you can't really teach songwriting, it's just an excuse to go fishing and hang out with your friends, go camping, set some stuff on fire. But my number one lesson, which is I learned from Steve Earle and Woody Guthrie, is that just take an old folk song and rewrite the text. So take the rhythm of the lyrics and write your own thing in there, and maybe take a story out of the newspaper or something you eavesdrop from, or something from your personal life. And I did that with a song that is a video I recorded when I was in the Ernest Tube studio with Clint Hawley and Dave Polster down in Bristol, Virginia last year. I recorded a song called Broken Hearted Man. And I actually put the iPhone on the ground and recorded the take, and it's on YouTube. And it's basically, I took an old folk song called I've Been All Around This World, which I learned from one of my sister's Dead albums. I'm just going to say right now, that's the first time I saw the word traditional on an album. So yeah, I came through bluegrass and old timey music, through the old hippie door, and it's fine. I can accept that. Those guys taught a lot of the world about old time music. They should get the credit for that. Just like the Beatles and the Stones told people about Little Richard and Muddy Waters. So
dig it. Well, let's take a break now, and we'll come back in for the jam session in just a moment. Rockstars, I want to talk with Tim more about going to Bristol, Virginia and recording direct to lacquer, his newest project, Exposition, where you're traveling all up and down through the Delta region, right? Recording songs.
And Oklahoma,
which is, it's the Northern Delta.
Yeah.
And so we'll be back in just a minute for the jam session. A reminder that I've got a YouTube playlist for you in the show notes where you can go listen to Tim's music and some of these projects he's talking about. When you're there, please remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you're listening to this on YouTube right now, please remember to hit subscribe and the notification bell so you know when the next podcast comes out.
Ding.
We'll see you guys in just a minute for the jam session. This show is sponsored by Recording Studio Rockstars Academy. Are you ready to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level and make your best record ever? Then visit the Academy to find the course that's right for you. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Then check out Rockstars of Drums to learn how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a professional Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Or if you are ready to start mastering your own records at home, then check out Rockstars of Mastering, where I walk you through exactly how I mastered my own record, Skadoosh, using nothing but plugins in PreSonus Studio One. These techniques would work for you in whichever DAW you are using right now. And if mixing is your focus, then check out my free course, Mix Master Bundle, where I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins in Pro Tools. Plus, you get a look at how I recorded everything in my studio and multi-track downloads to mix in your own studio, and even include in your mixing portfolio if you want. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and look for the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. Are you using a Mac in your recording studio? Are you tired of feeling like the studio setup you worked so hard to create is becoming obsolete too quickly? Wouldn't it feel great to have a trusted friend to help you keep your existing Mac and studio setup current and relevant so that you can focus on the thing you love most, which is making great music? Well, now you can rely on OWC, Other World Computing, which you can find at OWC.com, whose mission it is to help you get the most mileage out of your existing Mac. Whether you need to upgrade your RAM, install an SSD drive, add more connectivity, or simply find a great used Mac that's ready to rock, OWC will help take your studio into the future with a vast library of DIY install videos, 24/7 friendly support, and free shipping in the US on most items over $49. Why get frustrated and ditch your existing computer when you can take your studio into the future with OWC? Learn more at OWC.com and find out how awesome your Mac can be at OWC. Hey Rockstars, we're back now for the jam session. My guest today is Tim Easton, joining us here at the Toy Box Studio to talk about songwriting, making cool records, and his newest project. Tim, you ready to jam?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right, dude. So very quickly, I wanted to give you a shout out. I remember when you guys came with the Haynes Boys, and I keep telling you this every time. This one lyric just stuck in my head forever. You had a song where you had the lyric "carburetors or jackpots."
Oh yeah,
and I don't know that there's that much to say about it other than the fact that it's interesting how lyrics can stick with you. And it's also, testament to like kind of your appreciation of poetry, and that was poetic to me. But maybe you can talk a little bit more about lyrics and what makes something feel like a good lyric to you.
Well, sometimes it's a feeling of pain, like, wow, that hurts. Okay, that's a little scary. That's a little dangerous. Oh, okay, let's keep this. Let's keep going down that, because it's a cathartic thing. A lot of times,
you say something and it makes you feel a little scared inside.
Yeah, I think with lyrics, it's the truth. Really, that's what gets it done. Now, language and the sound of consonants and assonance, the sounds of vowels and all that stuff is stuff you learn through study and poetry. I mean, it doesn't come naturally either. You get language going together by reading poetry, and I suggest you read it every day if you're writing songs. I don't, but I suggest.
Did you actually study in school or anything like that?
Yeah, man. I was a poetry major at Ohio State.
I think Brad was too, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think he was literature.
Yeah, it's definitely, he has a lot of books in the studio, and I have a lot of books in reach of my studio. But I'm jealous of your studio. You guys in your little creative spaces are amazing. So lyric writing, man, read, because the more words that come in, the more easier they can leave you and, get exit and go out and basically like read the greats and study the greats. And when it comes to sounds and the way that words go together, carburetors or jackpots, that's carburetors or jackpots. It's like you can find a rhythm in things, that's just about like, oh yeah, it's for that particular car, find it going to the junkyard. like in finding a carburetor that, you know, at the junkyard, it's a jackpot. So
yeah, not any. Well, it is now if you're, you know, rebuilding a very old car, but back then it was a win because it was going to keep that car that you were driving every day running.
That's the first song I wrote that when I finished, I said, I'm a songwriter. It's called Jackie. That's the first song on the Haynes Boys album. Yeah. And there's another line about 8 tracks and milk crates, because the car had an 8-track player, and I used to put the 8 tracks into milk crates. So I basically, all these sounds, luckily, you just see what happens with, you know, with vowels and consonants, that the way they work together.
And what's the importance of couplets? For some reason, I've always been drawn towards, like you said, you know, you put 2 things together and they're.
Yeah, I wonder what the ancient thing. It's probably, and just look at a song itself. It's 3 minutes, 4 minutes. So you're okay. There's some longer ones, but that's just a little blip of an hour.
You barely get a word in at all.
It's like such a short period of time. We're so lucky. The novel, very difficult. The album form, you know, yes, but a song, luckily the best ones for me, kind of showed up fully formed, you know, and I barely had to write them down. There they were. They arrived in wherever they came from. You know, today I get on my knees and thank God, like, thank you for the song, please. You know, I really do. I'm like, oh my gosh, there it is. You know, and I try not to be self-conscious when it happens. You're like, oh, and then sometimes it's just fragments because the world is so crazy. We don't have time to let the song arrive. And I tell you, all you songwriters right now, you know what? Don't sweat the little meeting you got to be at or whatever. Just sit there and write the song and finish the song, because John Hiatt told me this too. It's like, I'd love to sit and get a panel together, and you and I could do this sometime. This would be a great panel at a I'm not in the music business, but okay, I'm in the Tim Easton business. No, I'm not, man. But like those little panels that they have at the plumbing convention. You know, it's like, let's put 5 songwriters out there. Okay, all of you put your phones on the table, plug them all in. All right, open up your recordings. Let's go to number 62. Those 70, I got like 94 on there, like half, just little bits of things that I'll just spit into the phone. Thank God for it, because it's the modern day capture. But like, if you don't finish it, how many times do you go back and finish it? Some of us do. And I've swore every year that I'm going to go back and I'm going to finish that. And every now and then on an airplane is when I do it. I listen to them. I'm like, oh shit, that's got a feel to it.
There's something about airplanes. Me too. It's like you're removed from all the worries of the world.
And you could die at any minute.
And you could die.
You're closer to death.
True, yeah.
No, poetry and writing on airplanes and working on airplanes is a big thing.
And you're comfortable.
You're closer to death. Well, hopefully you are. You're just basically, even though like shooting down the highway is more dangerous. I just heard another artist talk about that, like how annoying it is when someone's on a plane and they're going to be the chatty one and talk to you. Well, what I do now is if I get that person on a plane, I lean into them hard, man. I scare them with like how interested I am in what they're up to. Like I'm going to chat back at them so hard. That's my new move.
You're pulling lyrics.
Yeah, man. I've done it. I did it. The other day on a plane, someone said, "Hey, are you going home or are you leaving home?" And I was like, "Thank you."
Thank you. I'll take that.
Yeah. Home is the self, by the way.
Do I have to answer that? Because that was actually plenty. I got enough out of you already.
Excuse me. I'm going to put these earphones on and pretend like I'm, yeah.
All right. Awesome, man. Let's jump into your newest project, Exposition.
Yeah, man.
You're doing something really cool. Tell us all about it.
I put my studio, my portable studio in my car, which is like a 003, and my laptop, a bunch of microphones and like 6 guitars and a mandolin, and drove out to Okemah, Oklahoma, where Woody Guthrie's from. And the historical center there let me have the building for a couple of days. And I'm kind of tight with the Woody Fest people out there. Woody Fest happens every July around his birthday. And the whole family shows up, and it's just really fun. It's just great songwriters like getting together, and John Fulbright's from there as well, by the way. And he's my favorite of the generation of songwriters that he's come up with, and just a great performer. And so I went to Okemah to record, and then I picked up like a little pop-up studio. And then I went down to San Antonio and I checked into the Gunter Hotel, which is the same hotel Robert Johnson used for about half of his recordings, some of the sadder ones actually. And so I checked into that hotel and recorded there for a couple of days.
It was down in Texas?
Down in San Antonio, Texas. Yeah. And then I popped up to Clarksdale, Mississippi, and checked into this place called the Shack Up Inn, which is just the coolest hotel on the planet. It's a bunch of sharecropper shacks brought together in one area, and they look pretty run down on the outside, but on the inside they're decked out like nice rooms. And
I'm glad you put Mississippi in there, because I think I said something about the Delta, so at least I got us vaguely close.
That drive, I just drove just the other day. I drove from Shreveport up to Clarksdale, so that's through the Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi deltas, and it's like you're in one long William Eggleston photograph. You're just like, whoa, it's hard times left. I mean, there's a lot of burnt down and run down things, cars, and like poverty that like will bring you to, for me anyways, just brings me to the reality of what's really going on out there. And it's intense, man. So that intensity I tried to bring into the songs, and it's not like they're all Travis Pickin blues, country blues songs. I didn't do that. I didn't do the obvious thing there. I recorded a couple of tunes like that, but I brought in some ballads and some different things, and just did a really basic setup, a guitar and a vocal, and then maybe overdubbed, or I put a foot stomp. I put a mic on the foot, and just real basic, not just a folk album, because I didn't want to go down the road of something I say, man, I can't tour with a band. I can't afford to do it. But I can make a living as a musician, as a solo artist. And also my albums, like I'm not spending a ridiculous amount of money making them, because it's like Steve Albini said, you're like, what are you doing spending $10,000 on a publicist? Are you in what is that gonna, or a radio campaign? Is that gonna make that money back? Unless you have a manager and a team and you're really going for it, you're not. Okay. Unless you luck out and you get placements in a film, whatever. I'm like, work hard on working within your means. Mm-hmm. You know, that's my thing that I've learned after 30 years of doing this. It's like, I had my shot in the music business. I was given a shot and I blew it. Like I can say that. I can accept that I was a bit, I chose to work with I chose to work with people in music business management or whatever that weren't the right ones. Or I was drunk on tour, or I was a fool and didn't really lean into it. So that's my cautionary tale there is like, if you're lucky enough to be given the shot, then honor it and kick as much ass as you can. That's what Aaron Lee Tashian is doing right now. He is a songwriter that I've known for years and a musician of very high quality and a great producer too these days. And he's, got the machine behind him, as I like to say, and he's like taking it and spreading it out and just kicking some ass with it, and that kind of like thing is what, is a good example of what I did not do really. I was given a shot and kind of just shat in the doorway a little bit. I did, I have to own up to that.
That's a new expression for me.
Yeah. Well, I have to own up to it because, I have to own up to your mistakes. Otherwise you're never going to learn anything, right? And you're just going to be insane. And I'm plenty crazy, and I'm a creative person. So I will get a zone out in the self, all the time. And so I need to be reminded of how lucky I am to even be able to be able to sit here and talk to you about couplets and why like simplicity in songwriting is better and or more effective.
Well, there's more people out there that didn't, get a huge success out of that shot like you described. So, and I think when you do this for a while, you begin to realize that like there's more of us out there that are just doing it, and you better enjoy the hell out of doing it and enjoy all the people that you meet and all the connections that you make, and just like revel in all that creativity that everybody's doing, regardless of whether it's like, a moonshot or not.
Well, when it comes to recordings, I've got those recordings now, the I don't want to say legacy, but like, there's the bad and the good with that. So those are forever, so there's some good things there. Like I didn't totally blow it, but in kind of personal behaviors and stupid stuff I did and mistakes I made, that kind of stuff is if you don't learn, then you're kind of doomed. And I have to say nowadays it's a lot easier because I'm not drunk.
Yeah, really. All right, there you go. Well, hope you're enjoying the coffee though in the Superman mug.
Oh man.
So here's a question for you. You've traveled all over. you've sang, you travel with the same guitar. Have you noticed that your voice and your guitar sound and act differently in different environments, different places, different climates?
Oh yeah, man. I'm pure folky with that stuff. I just did a tour of Europe and certainly, and up in Alaska and different places and in the high desert, like the altitudes and stuff like that changes everything. But me and my guitar have been together for over 30 years now. So we have this relationship. I mean, Paco and I, the tone of that guitar and the tone of my voice have come into this one thing, this unified thing. And this is like a classic Chet Atkins joke too. Like people come up and they're like, that guitar sounds so good. And you want to hand them the guitar and say, here, let me hear you play it then.
Right. Exactly. How's it sound now? I put it in the case.
That's a Chet Atkins smart ass joke, but it's true. It's like, I've been playing that guitar for so long that when the altitude changes or something, little bit of wood creaks one way, I know right away. Like I pick that thing up and I know that it's got a cold and it needs to go to the guitar doctor, which in Nashville is Joe Glazer Instruments, man. Those guys have been doctoring my guitar up for a while.
They're great.
Yeah.
Have you found that certain areas of the world where you sing and play that you, I mean, maybe I'm just reaching here, but that you're like, oh, I get it now. I can see why this kind of music might have come out of this place.
Oh man, the Delta is the big time part of that. Like there's a vibe there and it's an oppressive vibe, not to be mistaken. Those cotton fields are huge. And before certain technologies were invented, this country's economy was kickstarted through slavery and absolute torture and darkness. And our music form came out of that. And we can't, not just our music, but like just our entire American, existence today has a lot to do with the vibe from that place, and what we did to get this country going. And I can't say enough about it. I know I went off into a whole new tangent there, but between that and what we did to the Native Americans, like that stuff needs to be taught with seriousness in school to children if we are going to progress as a country. That's the way I believe.
Do you find that you discover your own version of the blues when you're in a place where the blues come from? In other words, do you ever grapple with, I want to write a song like this, but I'm faking what I'm saying versus no, it's easy to find my own version of.
It's like, dude, I had a Southern accent on the very first Haynes Boys album. Like I just all of a sudden, like I'm just from the South and whatever. And I love it down here and I love the greasiness it's put on my music. I've learned about history and I'm a Civil War, goofball. Now that I'm older and have time on the road, I go do all those things, the museums and the battlefields.
So you dig history and all that.
Yeah, man, you have to in order to carry on in the future in a way that's positive. And I just learned, can you, I don't feel like I'm faking the blues at all. Everybody has emotional disturbances in their lives. And I have had issues with depression and I just feel lucky that I can acknowledge it and share it and do something about it. And being a songwriter and being able to use it as a cathartic release of what you're going through, super lucky to do that. A lot of people have to hold on to this shit forever. And it's like, ooh, they don't even get to go to a therapist or a friend to talk about it. Maybe it's the bartender. I don't know, but it's like songwriters, if you're lucky, you can dump it.
Like it's your own therapy.
Yeah. And you have to live with yourself and your like the carburetors or jackpots or any, like that came out of a painful experience. That car was repossessed and smashed and junked, and that's what junked under the Constitution that's what that line means. It was junked.
That's great.
And so a lot of pain brought that song. Now, you have to kind of acknowledge your own pain and I have to revisit it and you get to revisit my younger self, but I feel lucky because I'm proud of my lyrics there's a couple of them every now and then they're a little goofy, but what are you going to do?
You got to get the bunch of bad ones out of the way before you get to the good ones, right?
Yeah. I mean, you got to just do it. Every one of us has got to stumble a little bit and every one of us is going to feel the most success, I think, when we're the most honest.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to talking about this Bristol recording where you went live to Lacquer. I wanted to ask you more about that. what is a recording session? What can you describe
Yeah.
the technicals of that a little bit? And what does a recording session like that look like?
Well, it's one old RCA mic. It's in mono, and you're just sitting down and you're banging it out about a couple feet off the mic, and just going for it. And you're basically the actual details of how it works and the electronics and the science, me no good at discussing this. However, I interviewed Clint Hawley in the current issue of No Depression, which is now a quarterly magazine put out by awesome women in Nashville and men. But it's a great how-to issue that came out. And I just interviewed Clint about how exactly the direct to lacquer process works and the positive and negative things about it. So it's just really fast. You know, if your buttons from your shirt hit the guitar, man, they're in there. There's no going into the Pro Tools thing and zinking that out. It's just like, it's incredible what Pro Tools can do. I gotta say, sometimes, you know, like I kicked the mic stand on a couple of these things I just did. It's like,
don't worry, I won't edit that out at all.
No. That's fine. In the interview, yeah, I slapped the mic up, but I'm talking about the sessions I just did on the road. Like I kicked the mic, or I blew into the mic, or I hit a hard P, you know, like, and just like, and crushed it and didn't have the clown nose on there or whatever. And you know, you can kind of go in there and fix that a little bit, and you can't do that in the direct to lacquer process. The sound of that record though is really good. Like I just got to say, I'm super proud of it. And I also did not hire a publicist, did not hire a radio person, and owned it all myself, except for the Jimmy Rogers cover that's on there. And I'm not saying I'm not going to do that in the future. I really want to like work with like Brad and Robin again and some great producers and go back into the music business and, you know, give it the old, still going to night school, college try. But the fact is like, I'm really enjoying this independence I'm having right now. You know, I'm going through a divorce as well in my personal life. So there's this kind of resetting valve going on that, you know, you understand what I'm talking about here, having a daughter and just like a reset. And what do you love this for? And what are you doing it for? And, I did it again. You asked a question about something. Now I'm talking about my divorce.
No, well, we were talking about the lacquer thing. Yeah. You can't dig into the technicals. However, maybe you can describe how many songs would you do? Is a lacquer like you start playing 4 songs and you play them in a row and that's one side of the record, or do you put one song on one side of the record? What does that look like?
Man, it's 15 minutes on one master lacquer disc. So there's 3 songs right there. So you drop the needle and go. There's no like,
in between songs, you just take a breath.
No. You lift the needle off and then you wait a little bit. You make sure everything's clear. And he's over there. Yeah. He's over there with a small broom dusting off, cause it's grinding the lacquer right out of the thing as it's going. So he's sweeping that so it doesn't go under the needle and make that sound that you've heard on every, Bucka White, whatever, every Lead Belly album you ever heard from the early days, and Woody Guthrie from the early days, and Lomax albums, you know?
Yeah.
And Ralph Peer, who recorded the Carter Family, and Jimmy Rogers right there, and a lot of other people right there at the Bristol sessions, which is the birth of country music. It's the birth of the country music commercial record, was in Bristol about 90 some years ago.
And the lacquer, the stuff you're recording is similar to the way records are being made when they're mastered and pressed for vinyl now, or it's like a much older kind of recording process?
It sounds older just because it's mono, and but it's fairly pure thing. There's something about it. These guys, Clint Hawley and Dave Polster, have got this studio in Bristol called the Ernest Tube, and they're also multi-tracking, but they have a direct to lacquer, like just like the suitcase shaped thing that those guys would put in the trunk and carry around. But it's all dialed in. It's dialed in and tasty and really nice. And they know what they're doing. And like Jack White has one over at his office over here in Nashville, Third Man, but it's a booth. And I've used it a couple of times, and I'm, no knocking it. The dude is amazing. And thank you for invigorating the world with rock and roll spirit and making Nashville like just kick much ass. But like the album Neil Young made in that thing doesn't sound as good as mine.
I love it.
I said it.
There you have it.
I said it because it's like, because it just doesn't, because it's like, it's cool that he did that. And believe me, I was totally game. Like, I'm like, oh man, I'm going to go make a whole album at Jack White's booth and just say, here, I made a whole album, not just one track. And then Neil Young did it. And I was like, damn it. So I had the idea, like I wanted to, and I just wanted to simplify things because, as I said, I'm just going through stuff in my life. And I was like, I don't want to just sit around and listen to vocal comps or whatever the hell we got to do. It's like, can we just
make the music? Can
we just do it? Can we really just get in there and do it? And man, that was the quickest turnaround on an album I ever did in my life. And I'm already making another one. So,
is it possible for the rock stars to check out that particular record?
Oh yeah. That available? One actually, of course, like everything else, it has to be put into streaming form so I cannot pay for my daughter's education. But yeah, no, man, I love it. I love Spotify and that stuff because I can play Aretha Franklin for my daughter anytime I want. Yeah. It's like, check it out. This is Patti Smith. Check out these women, and I love it. So yeah, Paco and the Melodic Polaroids is on YouTube and Spotify and, Grandpa's Barn stream service, it's there.
Awesome. All right. I want to ask one more question about songwriting and then we will wrap up here. Yeah. Make sure you get to your next meeting on time. You talked about, go to number 68 on your phone. Talk to us a little bit about your sort of morning routine and what you do with songwriting. How do those things fit together? What are some of the initial moves that you make for creating a song?
Well, first of all, the morning is key. A calm, meditative morning is key with hardly other, human interaction. Okay, you got a partner in your life, your soulmate, then you guys have worked on that together and you know what, you got a rhythm and you got a pattern. But I'd say the morning and getting up and just not filling your brain with a bunch of bullshit and noise.
Like if it's all CNN and morning traffic, that's going to blow
man.
your groove.
I'm telling you, man, you grab that iPhone first thing and start Instagramming. And I've done that. I'm not saying I haven't done that before. But yeah, that's it's going to hold you back. I mean, let's get into those, because that dream state is true. Like that pure thing coming out of the dream state in the morning, creative work in the morning. Like the writer David Sedaris, he says, no matter where he is, he just gets up and does 30 minutes. So no matter what, if he knows he has to get on a plane at 8 a.m., he gets up at 6 and does 30 minutes or whatever, whenever, he does his 30 minutes every day and he committed to a routine. So I try to get in a routine of writing in the morning, even if it's just a few lines or something, or reading. So that is my main method is to let that early morning brain kind of be itself without too much interruption so I can get some work done. Now that came after, again, years of stumbling and being, not mentally ready at all in the morning to do anything except worry about, oh shit, what did I do last night? Well, not very often for me, but like, enough times that, that I didn't get any work done in the morning. So you got to show up every day and work, man. There's no Monday, Saturday. You just get your work done. That's what I'm doing. And I'm writing. And then if I'm lucky, it just hits me and I'm there and I just go for it.
What's the difference between, the initial sketch of an idea and the stage where you're like revisiting and now you're working on it? What do those look like to you?
Oh yeah. Well, I think the best ones get done pretty much right off the bat. Remember, like we said, a song is about 3 or so minutes, man, that's 2 verses and a chorus and you're pretty much there at 2 verses and a chorus or a chorus. Sometimes you don't know if the first thing you're doing is the chorus or if it's a verse, you don't know. Just don't sweat that stuff. Just write, just go, let it flow, let it be open. And you can edit yourself later. I've had to revisit stuff. I just revisited something that I wrote 2 years ago and I just loved it and I felt good about it. And then I just had this moment in Spain where I finished this song that I started writing in St. Augustine in Florida.
I love St. Augustine, Florida.
Yeah, man. I was there and I wrote this couplet or, St. Augustine, show me your teeth. It's a strange word to have to sing, teeth, but I did it and I was like, I woke up hungry. What can you teach me? It was a kind of optimistic song. Like I've been through some stuff. Right?
Did you find the waffle place? This is really good.
I just loved kind of, it's the oldest city basically in America, it's a Spanish settled. And then a month ago on a Spanish train, I had the whole train to myself. So, okay, classic goofball Tim Easton troubadour style. I'm like, I got the whole train compartment to myself as I'm cutting through the northern mountains in Spain.
So you start rocking out.
I pulled my guitar.
Sound.
I pulled out Paco in the Black Gibson J45, started playing, and then I started working on that song, and I wrote the second half there. So every now and then I get lucky and I revisit something and get back into the mood. And, lucky is one way to put it, but just like to finish your work it's just about committing to a time every day to show up to work and do it and keep that, whether it's your phone or a small little notebook, cause you want to look cool and you want to just stay analog with the writing. Yeah. That's fine. But I'll spit like hip hop lyrics into my phone as I'm driving. And you know what? Sometimes the phone corrects what it thinks you're saying.
Oh,
and those
lyrics,
and those lyrics are better.
Misreading and misinterpreting is where a lot of good creativity
comes
from,
like whatever you got to use, whatever you got that's there, don't sweat it. Just do it. Just get up and do it. And you'll see, next thing you know, you'll have some work together.
Do you find that morning, clear-headed creative process is for the sketching part, or is it also for the working hard on finishing something part?
No, the morning's more about the initial sketches, I'd say. It could be about finishing something you worked on, but mostly it's just about a brand new thing that floats in from the universe. And you just hope that you can have enough attention span and enough time in your life to address it and accept it and take it. Otherwise you're always rushing off to something and you can't do it. Like today, getting up to come over here. I was in the studio last night till 3 a.m. with Jesse Newport. We were working on these new mixes.
Shout out to Jesse.
Yeah, man. And it's like another one of the people in this town that has specific knowledge. It's good to have these people in your life. And I was up till 3 a.m. So at 9 a.m. I was a little foggy, and I was able to get it together to make enough coffee. And then as soon as I get going though, these days, man, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm walking upright. I'm so lucky. I'm so fucking
how
lucky.
Recent, if you don't mind asking, how recent is the experience of not drinking?
Oh, just a couple of years. I for 5 years, I didn't drink or smoke weed or anything, but I was just kind of doing it and a little bit of program in there, but mostly just willpower. And that was a little bit difficult for me.
And so the last 2 years have been very intentional. Yeah,
kind of intentional. And also just just reaching out to other people that are going through it. That's what it is. It's like, it's just helping, just trying to like stop thinking about your own, so-called problems and just ask someone else how their day is going, because there's people out there with worse problems than you. And no, there's some bad ones. Like tomorrow I got a pretty major surgery, It's a skin cancer thing I got to deal with. Like it's a hereditary thing that I got to deal with. And I'm in a little bit of fear about that. And it's a problem and it's not fun, but you know what? There's other people that are going through, I don't know. I'm trying to just remain in an optimistic spot because right now I'm able to like travel the world and play songs and record. And I got to tell you, man, I feel sometimes, and I'm not even successful by the music business standards, but I'm like myself, it's like, well, what is success? It's like, oh, it's actually being able to be happy and do what you love to do. So
how about having made a ton of music that's great that you believe in?
Yeah. Well, there, thank you. I think just to simplify it more, it's like being able to love what you do in work and play, because work is about, if you're going to break a day down into 24 hours, you got an 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work. That leaves 8 hours of play or maybe getting to work.
Your day is only 24 hours long?
Yeah. So basically work is a third of your life. So if work is not doing it for you, if it sucks or whatever, then a third of your life sucks and you're not going to be very happy. And I know it's not easy for all of us to get there with work and stuff like that, but that's what I found. So today I'm just in a really kind of a grateful spot of being like, oh my gosh, I'm the luckiest man.
I'm going to do this. I'm just sharing an idea, but rock stars, I encourage you, if you are spending a third of your life doing work that that you feel like is just work, and then, you're waiting to get home to make your music, steal from the work, steal song ideas, steal lyrics, steal stories right from work.
Another tidbit there would be, don't do a job that's going to stress your brain out so much that you can't create. Maybe do a mindless job, get a mindless gig where I washed dishes, man.
You can think about recording all day long.
I was a dishwasher. I unloaded boxes from trucks. I did some things that, I was the Kinko's delivery driver. How about that one? That's where I heard Lucinda Williams sing Sweet Old World. I pulled the car over in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, sometime in the 80s. I heard her sing Sweet Old World. I pulled the car over. It was the saddest thing I ever heard. And I was like, I want to be a songwriter that does that. And I was driving the Kinko's delivery van.
That's beautiful, man. Final question. You're going to take the Wayback hypothetical, or this is a final hypothetical question. We're going to take the Wayback studio machine. You go back, find a young Tim who's maybe thinking about going over to Europe, or you're over there playing on the streets.
I'm still young.
And you want to give yourself one bit of advice. You say, yo, dude, this is the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio yourself one day. What advice would you go back and give yourself?
Oh, I think we're going to have to start up a whole new podcast for that one. I've been saying it this whole time. It's like, don't waste other people's time. Don't be so wrapped up in your own thing that you don't think about how hard other people are working to bring creativity and art to the world.
That's great, man. Well, I'm going to think about you and getting you to your next meeting. So let the rock stars know how they can find you. How can they follow you online? If they want to support your next record exposition, where do they go?
timeaston.com. It's timeaston.com. That's me. I run that thing. I don't have an assistant back at the warehouse. I'm the one stuffing the envelopes. Well, I do have an assistant. She's 8 years old. She's in the third grade over here at Dan Mills.
Great.
And, as soon as I can get her to put the drum set in the car, she's going to drop out of school and we'll have a band. We'll hit the road.
Awesome.
But up until that point, it's just, timeaston.com.
All right. Dig it, man. Thanks so much for joining us on Recording Studio Rockstars. You rock, dude.
Thank you, Rich.
We'll see you around the studio. Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. Also, remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with these weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free mixing course at mixmasterbundle.com. Look for the link in the show notes. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio, all totally free. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music.